$1.5 trillion is about to disappear. Not from a stock market crash or a bank collapse. From something far more mundane, empty office buildings that nobody wants anymore. Walk through downtown San Francisco and you'll see the future. 35% vacancy. Towers built for thousands now echoing with silence. Manhattan's not far behind at 16% empty. These aren't temporary closures waiting for workers to return. They're financial time bombs ticking toward detonation. Here's what makes this different from every other real estate crisis you've heard about. This one was built on a lie everyone believed. The lie? That remote work was temporary, that employees would flood back to their desks once the pandemic ended. Instead, 55% of professionals now rank hybrid work as their top choice. Only 16% even want a fully in-office job. The numbers reveal something deeper happening beneath the surface. Office attendance remains 30% lower than before the pandemic. New leases have collapsed 25% compared to 2019. But the real crisis isn't what you see in vacancy rates. It's what's hidden in the debt. Between 2019 and 2021, property owners borrowed money at historically low interest rates. They bet billions on a world where offices would always be essential. Now, those loans are coming due. $950 billion in commercial real estate debt matures over the next 2 years. That's triple the 20-year average hitting all at once. The math is brutal. A building purchased in 2020 for $72 million just sold for $16 million. That's not a discount. That's a 78% collapse in value. Multiply that across thousands of properties nationwide, and you begin to understand the scale. Office building values have dropped 30 to 50% from their peaks, with downtown properties taking the hardest hit at 60% declines. But here's where it gets worse. 44% of office loans are now underwater, meaning the properties are worth less than the debt owed on them. Owners face a choice: inject millions to cover the gap or simply walk away. Many are choosing the latter. The delinquency rate for office loans packaged into securities hit 12.34% in January. That's higher than the worst moment of the 2008 financial crisis. Nearly 1 in 6 office loans is now being handled by special services, the financial equivalent of hospice care. And the crisis has barely started. Roughly half of the $100 billion in securitized loans coming due this year won't repay on time. What happens when lenders stop pretending these buildings will recover their value? The damage spreads outward like cracks in ice. Regional banks hold 70% of all commercial real estate loans, not JP Morgan or Bank of America. Community banks in cities across America that lack the cushion to absorb write-downs measured in billions. They're 5 times more exposed than their larger counterparts. When these loans default, the banks don't just lose money. They lose their ability to lend to local businesses, to fund mortgages, to keep their communities functioning. Cities face their own version of collapse. Manhattan could see a 44% decline in office property values over the next 6 years. That's $50 billion vanishing from the tax base. San Francisco's already watching it happen in real time. When property values drop, so does tax revenue. When tax revenue drops, city services get cut. When services get cut, fewer people want to live there, which drives property values down further. The doom loop isn't a metaphor. It's a fiscal death spiral already in motion. The restaurants near those empty towers are closing first. Then the coffee shops, the dry cleaners, small businesses that depended on office workers for survival. Commercial real estate contributed $2.5 trillion to the economy and supported 15 million jobs. Now those jobs are bleeding away as the sector contracts. Some analysts point to stabilization signals. Private commercial real estate values bottomed in late 2024. Transaction activity picked up slightly throughout 2025. But look closer at what's actually happening. $25 billion in loans have passed their maturity dates with no resolution. Before the pandemic, That number was effectively zero. Creditors aren't restructuring anymore. They're foreclosing. Foreclosure starts jumped 7% in the first half of 2025 compared to the year before, up 41% from 2020. The crisis splits the market in two. Prime office buildings in top locations might recover by 2027, returning to 8% vacancy. But older Class B and C properties, they're becoming stranded assets, zombie offices sitting empty, dragging down everything around them. Companies that do keep office space are upgrading, moving from outdated buildings into newer towers while simultaneously downsizing. The flight to quality accelerates the divergence between winners and losers. This isn't a temporary downturn waiting for workers to return. Capital economics projects office values won't reach pre-pandemic levels until 2040, a multi-decade recovery for a structural shift that's already permanent. The $1.5 trillion crisis isn't coming. It's here. The only question left is who pays the price when the dominoes finally fall. The office building wasn't killed by a pandemic. It was killed by a revelation. For decades, corporations convinced themselves that productivity required physical presence, that collaboration demanded cubicles, that culture needed conference rooms. Then millions of workers discovered they could do their jobs from anywhere, and they refused to forget. The towers standing empty across America's downtowns aren't waiting to be filled again. They're monuments to a belief system that collapsed faster than the buildings themselves ever could. Every loan default, every foreclosure, every $1 billion wiped from valuations is the market's way of admitting what workers already knew. The emperor had no clothes. The office was never as essential as the lease agreements claimed. So when you walk past those dark windows in San Francisco or Manhattan, understand what you're seeing. Not a temporary setback, not a pause before things return to normal. You're watching the physical infrastructure of an entire era becoming obsolete in real time. The $1.5 trillion question isn't whether these buildings will recover their value. It's what replaces them when the rubble finally clears.